Hello Year 8, welcome to your next lesson. We are going to move on to new content now, okay, after doing a quick recap of what you had looked at last year with algebra. So the next bit we're going to look at is expanding brackets, okay. Now, expanding brackets, it doesn't mean making the brackets bigger, okay. Expanding brackets is another term for multiplying, okay. So when we expand brackets, what we're actually doing is we're multiplying. Okay, now all the bracket does normally, if we think about BIDMASs, means we do that first. Now, if I look at the first one, for example, I've got 2x plus 1 in my brackets. Now, we know from what you did last week, we can't simplify 2x plus 1 because they haven't both got the same variable at the end. They haven't got exactly the same letters after them, so we can't simplify. Now, when we've got a bracket set up in this way with a number outside, we have got a little multiply sign between the number and the bracket. Now, it won't ever be shown as a multiply sign, but that's something we need to know. Okay, so what we've effectively got is we've got to do 3 times by our whole expression of 2x plus 1. Now, what I want us to use in order to help us complete this is we're going to use a grid. Okay, so we're going to start with a nice simple grid. Okay, and we're just going to fill in some gaps. We're going to multiply in this grid. We're going to put our 3. So our number from outside is going to go in that first box. And then we're just going to split our bracket at the top. Okay, so our 2 parts of our bracket, the first part will go into that box there. The second part will go into that box there. Now I've taken the plus with me as well, okay, just for a bit of consistency. It does not mean I add, it just means that one is positive, okay, so it's no longer a plus, it just means it's a positive number. And now we times, so we're going to do 3 times by 2x, okay, now what we looked at multiplying algebra last lesson, so we do our 3 times our 2, which is 6, and then we've got x times by 1, so we just get 6x. Then we do our 3 times our positive 1. It is not 3 add 1, it's 3 times positive 1. So that's going to give us positive 3. All we then need to do is take the 2 parts we've just worked out, and that will become our answer. Okay, right, let's just have a look at another one. So, 2, then in brackets 4 minus 6x. Now we know that means multiply. We are going to, whenever we're asked to expand brackets, we are going to come back to our grid again. Okay, so we put our grid in, we put whatever is outside the bracket, so in this case 2 is going to go into that first box there. So we'll put our 2 in, and then whatever comes inside our brackets goes along the top. So in this case, we're going to have 4, and we're going to put our 4 into that gap there. And we're going to put our negative 6x, and this is why it's important we take it with us, our negative 6x into that gap there. Okay, remember guys, that doesn't mean minus 6. Now we'll subtract 6x, it means it's negative. We do our multiplying, so 2 times 4 to give me 8. 2 times by negative 6 gives me negative 12, and then I've got my x. So I take the 2 bits I've just worked out, and they come out to give me my answer. Okay, so all we're doing is following along. We use our grid, put our numbers in, multiply the parts together. So we'll do 2 for this one, 2 times 4 to give us 8, 2 times minus 6 to give us minus 12x. Right, I want you to pause the video now, and I want you to have a go at those 2 next questions. So pause the video, have a go at those 2, and then we'll have a talk through it. Okay, right, let's have a look. So, we've got our little multiply. Therefore, we know we need to use our grid. So we put our grid in. Our 8 comes in at the start. Our 2x and our plus 5 going along the top. So number outside goes into the box on the first column. The bracket gets split and puts in the 2 at the top. And then we multiply 8 times by 2x to give me 6x. X times positive 5 to give me positive 40. Take those two parts I've just worked out, and they become my answer. So I will have 16x plus 40. Second one, exactly the same. We've just got a negative in there we need to be careful with. So we come to our grid. We're going to multiply. Our 7 comes in first. Our 2x and our negative 3. And we multiply. 7 times 2x gives me 14x. 7 times by negative 3 gives me negative 21. Our answer comes from what we've just worked out. 14x subtract 21. Okay, so that's when we've got numbers outside. The next ones I just want to have a look at is where we've got some letters outside. Okay, now our process does not change at all. We go through exactly the same thing. We just need to be a little bit more careful with when we're multiplying our algebra together. It still means multiply, so we're still going to use our grid to help us. Okay, so we'll put our grid in again. Exactly the same grid. This time, it's going to be x that comes in front. It's always what goes outside the bracket. Okay, whatever's in front of the bracket goes into that first box. Then we'll have our 3x and our plus 1 as we did before, and we multiply. Now if I do 3x times x, that x has got a little imaginary 1 at the front of it. So I can do 3 times 1 to give me 3. And I can do x times x. Now we should remember from last lesson, when I do x times x, my answer becomes x squared. So we should get 3x squared. Then 1x times 1 gives me a positive 1x. We can then write out our answer, taking what's in here, to become 3x squared plus 1x. You do not necessarily need that 1 in. If you haven't got the 1 in, that's perfectly fine. It is exactly the same thing. Right, with that in mind, can you pause again for me and just have a go at this next question? So pause, have a go, and then we will go through. Okay, so hopefully you've had a go at this one. So grid should be in place, and I do want to see, guys, a grid for each one you do, okay? Because it's going to help us further down the line. If we get into the habit of using these, it makes our lives much, much easier. So that A that's outside the bracket, whatever's outside the bracket, should always come in first. Then we can have our 2a and our plus 3 that's come out from our bracket. We multiply. That a's got a magic 1 in front of it, so we can do 2 times 1 is 2. A times a gives us a squared. Positive 3 times 1a gives me 3a. Take what's in the brackets out. 2a squared plus 3a. Okay, as long as we follow this process through and we remember to use the grid, we can apply this to loads and loads and loads of different ones. Okay, we will use this method throughout the rest of your time doing maths. Okay, really, really important. Right, last two I want to show you are a little bit harder. By all means, pause the video now, have a go at those two, and then we will talk through it. For those of you more unsure, just carry on watching and we'll work through it together. Okay, so slightly more difficult, more algebra, but it just uses what you did last lesson into a slightly more complicated form. That's all, nothing massively difficult. So we always come back to our grids again. So we're going to multiply and we're going to put our grid in. What was outside, so now we've got a combination of number and letter. So 2y comes outside. my 4y and a positive x goes inside. So not only have we got number and letter outside, we've got two different letters inside as well. Lots more we need to be careful of. 2y times y. I'm going to do my 4 times my 2 first. That gives me my 8. I'll then do y times y. And y times y gives me my y squared. Okay. Then I move to my next bit. I'm going to do 2y times positive x. Again, same as before, if you've just got a letter on its own, you can always put that 1 in front of it just to make it a bit easier. I'll do my 2 times my 1 to give me my 2. And x times y, we write as xy. Take what we've written out. 8y squared plus 2xy. We can't combine these together. They are not exactly the same letters, what we looked at earlier on in the week. Not exactly the same. We can't add them together, so we leave it as is. Last one, definitely the hardest. We've got lots of negatives involved as well that we need to be very careful with. So, always come back to our grid. It gives us far more chance of getting these right if we come back to the grid each time. We're going to have to make sure we take the whole negative 4x with us. So, minus 4x will come in front. We can then have 2x and a negative 2y. Okay. Got to make sure you take all of it with you. Right. Now when we multiply, I need to do 2 times by negative 4. 2 times negative 4 will give me negative 8. Then I can do my x times x, which we know is x squared. So we'll have negative 8x squared. Now we move into the next part. Again, you're going to need to be really, really careful. So we will now do negative 2 times negative 4. If I multiply two negatives together, I get a positive answer. So minus 2 times by minus 4 will give me positive 8. Then I can do my y times my x, y times x to give me xy, or yx, it doesn't matter, it's exactly the same thing. Take the two I've just worked out, and they will become my answer. Last two, definitely more difficult, guys. Okay, understand that entirely. Definitely more difficult, but still something that you can definitely do. What I want you to do now is go on to show my homework and have a go at the questions that I've put on there. Make sure you're marking your work. Get in contact with me if you need any help.